All right, guys, welcome back to another podcast in our AltMed series. We're very pleased today to have with us a special guest. You might know him from CBD Reviews Australia. It is the one and only Stephen. Stephen, welcome.
Hey guys, how you doing? Hey Andrew.
Some
hey Mitch.
some know him as Stephen NG, but it's definitely. Hey, how you doing, Steve?
Pronounced perfectly.
Perfectly.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. How about you guys?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, very good. Very pleased to have you on. You're actually our first guest that we've had, so yeah, we're absolutely thrilled to get you on. But I guess
other than the one we had last week.
Well, I feel honoured either way.
Sorry,
you're the first second guest.
You're the first CBD reviewer we've had. So maybe we might get you to just talk a little bit about your background and how you got into this space.
Yeah, I guess I can start off by. I'll start from the beginning, I suppose. If you're talking about cannabis in general, my brother introduced me to it, like way back when I was probably like 16 or 17 or something. So that's a long time ago now. And cut a long story short, I enjoyed it. I was probably actually technically self-medicating at that point without realizing it. I think a lot of people do get introduced to cannabis or, potentially even other, chemicals or pharmaceuticals, whatever, by self-medicating without realizing it. But I enjoyed cannabis. It helped me through that patch of my life. And we ended up growing it on our balcony. So that was my first introduction to cultivation. Very basic stuff. Like I think it was like half a dozen plants or something. This is like in a residential area as well, and no one seemed to care, funnily enough. But that was just like a little experiment.
And that was when you realized you're a bit of a green thumb.
I wouldn't say I'm a green thumb. I'm pretty good at killing plants, actually, but it's pretty successful at doing that one crop that I tried with him. And we didn't do any more further exploration after that. But then I got as you get older and become more mature and you have a career and everything like that. I guess forgot about cannabis, and it was only actually my dog that reintroduced me back into cannabis in the form of CBD, because my dog has epilepsy, and this is probably going around 3.5 years ago now. And sourced CBD off a black market person because that was the only way to get it basically in Australia at that point in time. Really helped his epilepsy, really helped it. And like his attacks went from maybe one a day down to like one a week, and then like once every couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden his attacks actually increased again. And I was like, wait a minute, this is a bit weird. Why are these attacks increasing? This is obviously working, right? So I was like, okay, well, this bottle is unlabeled. I'm buying it from some random website. I don't know where its origin was. I don't even remember it now. And I was like, well, no label. The guy's a real charmer on the phone, like one of those salesmen, I guess you could say. Talks a lot. And I was like, okay, well, how do I find what's actually in this? What's actually in this? So how are they testers for this or something like that? So started reading research, peer-reviewed articles, following guys. I was like, okay, well, found a couple of kits on the internet, ordered some basic ones off eBay, tested the product, and I was like, oh, okay. This was a basic test. You could only test for THC presence or CBD presence. I was like, okay, no THC, that's a good thing. And no CBD either. Okay. So then because I had an old bottle, and I was like, okay, this latest couple of bottles I got, I was like, okay, I'll compare it to this old bottle. I had some like little dregs left in the bottle. I was like, okay, well, now they smell totally different. Right. Then I thought, okay, well, I'll try a taste test myself. I probably should have done it before giving it to my dog. I don't know.
I do that.
I was like,
power meter.
Sorry? Yeah. Well, I thought this is the thing. It was like the taste was totally different between the two bottles. I was like, okay, something's going on here. So I thought, okay, well, this is a basic test. How do I find out really what's in it? And I found more advanced test. I think it's called the AlphaKet test. And it uses thin layer chromatography to very basic scientific sort of test for presence of cannabinoids. You can use it to test presence of different compounds depending on what reagents or whatever you use. I think it's commonly used in primary school science and even high school science. It's not very good for testing, I guess you could say quantifying actual cannabinoids or thing, but testing for presence I think is pretty good as long as you can establish a baseline. So I got this kit, tested it. Again, no CBD, no THC, no cannabinoids at all. And I had a reference sample because at that point I found someone else that had some real stuff that actually smelled like cannabis. And to cut a long story short, ended up, I guess you could say, like helping found CBD Reviews Australia Facebook group because someone found the group and other people had been ripped off by this person and multiple other people. And obviously it was a common thread a couple of years back because people, new thing really, and people were just being taken advantage of. People just selling like olive oil and whatever to old ladies, people that are dying of cancer and just ripping them off. And it's just like, what the hell is this? Excuse my language, but this is bullshit. This is unacceptable. And long story short, the group's grown like over 8,000 people now. It just shows that people want some genuine information, genuine product, quality product, tested product, and they want to know the prices of it. They want to know where to get it, legally, through clinics or doctors. So that's a short thing, if you could call that short.
That's an amazing story, and genuinely, I think I speak on behalf of everyone who's a member of that group, and just saying thank you for, I guess, going out and getting that testing kit and really taking the lead with trying to find out what's in your oil.
No, thanks.
I mean,
I first heard of Steve, I think, when something to do with data, maybe some. I heard he's really good with Excel, that kind of thing, and I noticed that he was very integral in some of the online communities, and I just saw him always helping out basically anybody who had any queries about anything that he could, from the way that the CBD interacts to the types of products that are out there to where you can go. And I just thought, okay, there's definitely somebody that we need to get to know, somebody that's actually got an intrinsic motivator, completely like just doing it out of the passion of the pure passion for helping people. So I could definitely, that shone through for me, and I knew that was.
No, thanks. That's really nice of you to say, Mitch. Thanks for that. And I think your passion is the right word. A lot of people in the community are passionate. There are a lot of different groups out there, a lot of different people, individuals, businesses, both on the legal and black market side, that are genuinely passionate about cannabis. And it's not just CBD, it's cannabis in general. And that goes for you guys as well. You can tell me a bit more about yourselves, Andrew and Mitch.
Well, I mean, one of the things that strikes me about CBD reviews is I know there might be some people in the, for want of a better term, legal cannabis industry that that might look at CBD reviews and say, well, hang on a second, we've got some of our products in there mixed with some black market products. But to my mind, the forums and the community there, it's really a snapshot of the real picture of how CBD is being consumed in Australia. We know that, more than 90% of CBD consumed in Australia is black market. And if you don't believe me, have a look at Sydney Uni. Lambert Institute has put out some commentary on that. And so, it's really a chance for people who are genuinely part of that community to really share reviews, share experiences, and talk about what's worked or hasn't worked for them. And also, I think, and this highlights something you said, to really to keep the people across the legal and black market sector honest, because there are definitely some scammers out there One thing you also said that just stuck out in my mind is that, you know, if somebody had a dog with epilepsy, even now in 2021, there are no legal access pathways that I'm aware of. I know that the APVMA, the regulator, is considering medicinal cannabis access pathways, but at the present time, if you have a dog with a condition that you think, you know, could benefit from CBD or just medicinal cannabis in general, you have no choice but to source that in the black market.
That's correct.
So, you know, it's really difficult, and it's really difficult, especially when you consider that when we look abroad at other jurisdictions like the US, like Europe, that CBD is, you know, it's definitely a really big part of the CBD market in other countries. So we still haven't got there yet, but look, it's hopefully something that's not too far away.
Yeah, hopefully. Things are moving in Australia, I believe, from a legal framework perspective. But as you mentioned, like if you have a sick pet, and you know, I'm 100% believer. I've helped many animal lovers and pet owners for dogs and other creatures, and you know, I know myself personally. Like my boy, his attacks have gone from like one a day, like I said, to like now he literally has an epileptic attack once every 3 months.
Wow.
Once every 3 months, and say level wise, it used to be like 7 or 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, like when he has one, it's like probably a 2 out of 10, and that's at that 3 month like time frame. And I actually give him like a few drops when I catch him having the seizure, and it's over within like 60 seconds.
That's amazing.
You know, so it works.
One thing I was hoping to touch on during our sort of conversation today is, given that you're someone who I would consider to have a really broad eye on the industry as a whole, what are some of your observations? I know we've sort of talked privately about the emergence and prevalence of, I guess, alliances between clinics and products, and how that affects prescription choices and pricing. I know we could probably talk about this for hours and hours on end.
Yeah, definitely.
Mitch and I promise we won't torture you with that. We only need we just need 4 hours of your time today.
Yeah. Well, I could ask what your opinions are on that. I don't know. From you know, from your expertise and backgrounds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to go back and maybe put both of your questions together, a little bit about us and a bit about our perspective on that, I guess. So, without getting too into it, Andrew and I obviously have an import license, and we're involved in the game, for full disclosure. But I come from quite a long lineage, a big kind of cannabis family. We've been involved for a long time in Europe and America and various other places, specifically on the genetic side of things. I've worked on farms since I was 6 years old, so I've been around.
Wow, it's in your blood.
Yeah, well, I think if you tested it, it might be, yeah, but I'm not sure.
It might be green.
Yeah, it might be green. It's definitely got a couple of cannabinoids in there at some point. Yeah, in terms of we don't. I'm not too quick to judge. I mean, everybody is, you know, people are in it for business purposes. People are in it for more intrinsic purposes. We tend to stay as neutral as possible because I think reputation is important to us. We like to also be in control of what we do as much as possible. And because we like to be able to make those decisions very quick and agile as we see fit. And we like to have a lot of control over the products that we're doing, because for us, products are paramount, because that's at the end what the patient is going to experience. It's not about, you know, a brand or it. I mean, it is about a brand, but it's not purely about brand. It's really about the genetics and what people are getting in their medicine. So from us, it's not as much about, you have to play the game because there's games out there and people making alliances and things like that. But I think it's more interesting for us to hear from your perspective, because you're really much more neutral even than us, and you've got the finger on the pulse. You're dealing with the everyday person trying to access and the trials and tribulations they go through on a daily basis, and you hear and you're helping them with the issues they encounter on a day-to-day basis. So for us, I think maybe the alliance thing is important to touch on, but I'm actually also curious on what it is that people are, what are the basic pain points for people out there that they're looking to kind of overcome on an everyday basis.
I'm happy to elaborate on that. Firstly, I do pride myself on being like unbiased and impartial. It's very difficult to do, especially on the industry side of things, because as you said, of the alliances and competitive nature of the business of the cannabis industry, especially being such a nascent industry. Basically everyone's still really in startup mode. Everyone's moving their chess pieces and everything like that, making alliances. There's probably over the next, just my own personal observations, I think over the next, few years, there's going to be a lot of mergers and acquisitions. Some places are going to survive, some aren't. And that's from
Apria styles.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean that's a big one. So I mean, I don't know what's going to happen here in Australia, but I'm not going to talk about the stock prices and finances and all that sort of stuff. But from the patient perspective, I know that one of the issues is that that's my boy there. From the patient side. Yeah. I gave him some oil earlier. Actually, I give it to him every day. So, but it's he still neutralizes some of his anxiety and stuff like that. But he's dogs, they're always gonna bark. Sorry, getting back to the patient side, patients, I guess, generally aren't aware that, say, if they go to an actual clinic, right? Most clinics, there's probably almost 20 of them now, if not more. That specialize in medicinal cannabis. And most people aren't aware that most clinics have some sort of strategic alliance with, say, a product, whether they're a subsidiary company of a producer or a cultivator, or an importer or a distributor themselves. And, you go to a doctor and you think you're just going to get prescribed what is actually appropriate for your condition, right? But I've heard stories just through the grapevine and observing commentary and just generally through private messaging from actual patients, stories of doctors and clinics going to prescribe something that they actually have a direct conflict of interest with, because it's something that they distribute, that they sell, that they as an individual, as a doctor, actually collect money on, as a percentage, as well as the clinic fees on top of it, So how is that not a bit of a conflict? And this is not just one clinic, this is probably a number of clinics, because of the way the business model is. And, that's why another reason what I do is I provide that information about products and prices of that data, so that patients can, say, take the spreadsheet I create to a doctor and go, hey, these are actually all the products actually available. Choose one, prescribe the right one for me, and patients should probably ask them, hey, are you affiliated with this product you're prescribing me? Sometimes they are, and it's sometimes for a well-intentioned purpose for, say, research, for instance, and to gather data to, help improve the industry and prove that cannabis is something that's, has good efficacy for a particular condition. But that's a point that I think a lot of people are unaware of. They just don't know that what they're going to be prescribed is actually genuinely exactly what they need.
Yeah. The interesting thing from a legal point of view, I think one of the things that is the other side of the coin here is that businesses are just adapting to the framework that's been set up by the TGA. So, for example, the authorized prescriber scheme was set up to avoid having to have doctors on a case-by-case basis lodge special access scheme, applications to the TGA, await the TGA's approval, then send that approval plus the prescription to the chemist. I mean, this can take sometimes. The TGA has generally turned around SAS applications fairly sort of expeditiously in sort of a matter of 4 hours. But even still, an authorized prescriber access pathway allows a person to come to a clinic to get a script straight away. However, the scope of that doctor's, or that doctor will have a scope of products which they which attach to their status as an authorized prescriber. And so it's a difficult one where, the doctor ideally should be product agnostic, because they should be saying what is the best product for my patient. But at the end, if they're trying to facilitate quick and fast access to medicinal cannabis, then they might say, well, of the 8 products that I'm an authorized prescriber for, this is a close fit. And regardless of, I potentially, in the case of many clinics, I potentially have a financial interest in this product, but, I can balance that out by saying that I'm actually giving this patient immediate access to medicinal cannabis because I give them the script and they take it to a chemist. So,
or reliable access in terms of, companies that are able to provide that medicine ongoing. So we know that's been an issue as well. Traditionally, people getting a product and then it not being in stock. So if a company proves that they can actually produce that time and time again, that's very comforting, I think, for a lot of doctors.
And I mean, I've heard stories of a lot of the processes for a lot of the clinics, at least, is they have like a nurse consultation, right? And you discuss with the nurse, what may be appropriate for your condition, your health history, and what you've tried and whatnot. And sometimes, in some cases, even what you may prefer, whether you prefer, say, an oil or a flower, right? And that nurse generally, hands it off to a doctor, and the doctor, you have an appointment with the doctor after a couple of days or whatever the time frame is, and they're supposed to take that nurse's sort of advice a little bit, and right. A lot of the times they just pump them through and just like, I'm just going to write a script for whatever the nurse recommended. A lot of times the doctor will actually talk to the patient a bit more in depth and find out maybe this wasn't appropriate. And then there's a lot of times where the doctor will be like, no, that nurse did not recommend the product that I have a financial stake in. So I'm going to change all of that advice and prescribe something that I have a direct stake in. And it just coincidentally happened to be a new product that my company released on the market as well. So,
I just have to
take that how you will. I mean,
Your dog is going for it in the background.
That's what he does. He just likes to dig.
Can we meet your?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hey, boy, what are you doing?
Can we meet your patient?
Yeah,
there you go. There you go. It's a bit hard to see on camera because it's so dark, but here you go, champy boy.
Who have we got here?
Hey. There you go.
We've got
Mitch, Andrew, and everyone else.
Very cute.
There you go, mate. Back to it.
Very cute. So we've had now, multiple guests on the show. So this is going really well.
I think he wants to come back.
Well, okay, I know maybe this is just me, but I feel like a lot of people listening, and that's, by the way, the 2 people that will listen to this. I feel that people will go, hang on, you've got Steve on the podcast. You've got to ask him, what is the sort of price variability between legal products and black market products? Because, I'm just wondering if the 90% of people that are getting black market products, is there really a genuine commercial incentive for them to go down that pathway? Or are there some black market providers that actually kind of come in pretty close to the legal providers?
That's actually a very, very good question. Because as you know, obviously I compile the data on pricing on both black market and legal products. So I'm not going to say it's irrefutable, but it's pretty damn close to that. I have good relationships with people on both sides of the industry, both black market and legal side. And, like, honestly, the perception is a little skewed by, people that are on the, I guess you can say, community side and on the black market side, that their products are cheaper and they're better quality, and they're more easily obtainable. I think I'll tackle each one of them like separately if I can remember what I just said. Say price wise, right? Right now, if we're talking about oils, the legal market probably has the black market beat. If you're talking about CBD oils and even THC oils, this is both from just CBD isolate point of view, but also full spectrum CBD, and even like full spec, 1-to-1 type ratios for THC CBD oils. The legal market has got them beat now. If you're talking price per milligram.
Wow.
I think the lowest one is legally is probably around, I think 6.6 cents per milligram of cannabinoids. Black market, from what I've seen, and it's a bit more difficult to quantify from the black market side, because it's not like they have websites. I mean, they do have websites out there, but there are people in the community, like genuine people, that are literally giving away product for free. And that is awesome. We need people like that. We need advocates like that, to help people out, because legally, say for cancer, you can't actually get prescribed legally. You can only get it prescribed for the symptoms, like from chemotherapy. And also from a legal perspective, you can't get prescribed FICO or RSO, which is like full extract cannabis oil or Rick Simpson oil. You can't get that stuff legally. You can't get cannabis oil at that potency legally, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So from a price point of view,
actually, just one slight correction there, which is very minor, but you can get it for terminal cancer. So in a palliative scenario,
yes, yeah,
you get it for that. But you're absolutely right. You can't. It will never be prescribed for your cancer by an oncologist. It will only.
Yeah. You can't just walk into the GP and get it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Technically, you would be allowed access if you were written a script for it.
Yeah.
But no doctor's going to do that.
But unfortunately, the education is still lacking, and a lot of doctors are just unwilling. They're not even unwilling; they're literally unaware.
Yeah, it's definitely a conservative approach in Australia, which look, I do and don't agree with. I mean, I think the conservative approach in Australia is always, there's a lot of things that it's great for, and it's protected a lot of people from very negative outcomes. I think that as we've seen overseas, and the Lambert Initiative even talking about Institute talking about CBD especially, I think that it's maybe a little bit on the conservative side, maybe a bit too obviously dealing with it in Europe and dealing with it in America, it's just you just see
totally different approach, isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely different, and it's looking at what point it becomes kind of toxic or dangerous. It's really you're still trying to figure it out, but it's
more data definitely needs more data still, I think. But I think
definitely needs more data. But
I keep wondering what the TGA and perhaps the relevant food safety government body in Australia makes of the fact that CBD is basically on the cusp of becoming a novel food in Europe. And so I just keep thinking, I wonder, like, what does the TGA make of that fact in terms of, how it should think of it only as prescription only at the present time. I mean,
I find that very interesting, because Australia, we take all, say, the quality and standards from the European Pharmacopoeia, right?
Yeah.
For the testing and everything, from microbial, bacterial, pesticides, heavy metals, and all that sort of stuff. So we're taking their standards on that, but we're not taking their approach and standards to the actual regulation of it.
Life's many mysteries in this industry, but
Find
they are. It is a poles apart position. Like if you have it as a food supplement, like Joe Rogan's having it in his energy drink when he does his podcast. I'm conservatively guessing that Joe Rogan has a few more viewers than we do, Mitch, but we'll get there. And then over here in Australia, it's strictly prescription only, at least for the time being, until it might be descheduled. That. So, but returning to pricing wise, I was really surprised to hear you say that the legal market has the black market beat. So then why do people go to the black market, do you think?
I'm going to add a caveat to that. So that's in respect to, say, oils. I guess you'd say extracts. As I said, the cheapest is 6.6 cents per milligram of cannabinoid content. I think there probably are products out there that are as cheap on the black market for CBD and THC oils, but the average price is probably around 10 to 15 cents per milligram on the black market. And here's the thing is that I'd like to say that supporting the legal industry is actually a good thing. I support community leaders and the black market side of things 100%. However, there's no quality testing. There's people on Instagram selling stuff, that's, say, CBD isolate, 300 milligrams for $300 for a bottle on Instagram. That's not right. That's taking the piss. And people don't know. People that are new to cannabis and CBD and cannabinoid medicine.
So you say 300 milligrams, a 1%?
Yes, 300 milligrams in, say, a 30 ml bottle for $300. So at least there's CBD in that one. Some of them don't even have. Yeah, that's true. You're still paying. You're still getting some cannabinoids, but it's pretty bad. That's really bad.
You'd expect that to be about $30. You'd expect it to actually be about $30.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's a 10 times markup, and that's just nice. I mean, you could, for a legal product, I think there's some products out there that have 300 milligrams in 1 mil to demonstrate the potency, and quality. That's a CBD isolate as well. But it's these are the differences. And so I was going to get back to the caveat of the pricing is that, say, in terms of flour, however, legally is still more expensive than street prices in black market. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what the reason is for that from an industry perspective.
I imagine that part of it has to do with the fact that it's probably a little bit more difficult to import flour because it's not just bringing in oil. You now need a phytosanitary. You need to bring there's a few more steps that you're dealing with the Department of Ag as
potentially,
well.
And the other thing I'd say is that even if you're growing it domestically, and there are some really good growers, I'm sort of trying on this podcast series to not really name companies or anything, and I'll keep to that. But I will say that there are some really good cultivators working domestically, and I think even for them, their price point's got to be higher because they've got to have security infrastructure. Guards their greenhouse as per their ODC license. They've also got to, it's an actual proper project. Whereas, you could be buying bush flower from a guy who grows it in his backyard in, suburban.
Yeah.
So
you can't equivalent. You can't the costs are not equivalent. The comparisons are not equivalent at all because a backyard grower does not have the security requirements, the testing requirements at every single step of the process, from seed to the little babies to
you're talking about guerrilla growers out in the hinterlands don't have to produce the GMP.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, They totally do. They totally do.
Which
They
is
got the certifications and everything.
It's weird. The last time I was out in that part of the world, I remember just seeing, TGA auditors in white coats everywhere, just going through the mountains, just, keeping the standards up.
In that big white van.
Yeah. But no, that's really interesting. And in terms of, so we've talked pricing. What are some other insights that you see between black market and legal market?
Access, surely.
So access is, I think that was the third point, is, yes, you can, get CBD oil or, probably within 24 hours if you order online. And that's when Australia Post is working at peak efficiency, which it hasn't been for a while now. But, just call it a couple of, 2-3 days, right? If you're talking about flour, if you know a mate down the street, or a mate of a mate, or you got a plug somewhere, you get it in 15 minutes probably. You can't compete that. Illegal can't compete with that unless they start opening actual dispensaries and taking like the US sort of approach to things. But like in terms of access to the legal side, it's actually not that difficult to get a script. And in my opinion, this is my opinion, it's not that really that expensive either. Yes, if you're comparing like total cost, yes, there are additional costs. If you go down the legal pathway, obviously you have to pay for like, actual consultation. The time probably takes a little longer, and there might be a little bit of a wait for, say, a TGA approval, and then getting your product. But you can get a product probably, the fastest I've seen someone get like a product is probably within like 72 hours. They get their approval, everything like that. Associated pharmacies nearby, it's got the official script, and you can get it dispensed. Average is probably like 5 days, but yeah, you've seen it quicker. Yeah.
Well, for authorized prescribers, it's instantaneous. They just go. If they some of those pharmacies will already they might have that product in stock for repeats of another customer. And then they might be able to use that in the interim and then reorder that stock for the repeats of the other customer.
Yeah.
I should say. So I've seen it almost instantaneous, if you don't include maybe the referral time. So that was, So,
yeah. Oh, that's good. You see, so it just goes to show that there's, if you're comparing time frames, depending on your situation, they're almost on par. I guess, depending on how urgent you've run out of your cannabis. I think it's not, I wish there was compassionate access schemes where people are, say, less well off, like from a socioeconomic perspective, are able to get, medicinal cannabis, that is subsidized. Like it really should be on the PBS. I understand the legal framework around that's very difficult to get something on the PBS. It's difficult enough to get it on the ARTG. So, these are all hurdles for the legal industry to go through. Unfortunately, despite all the millions of anecdotal reports and great data and peer-reviewed research that is out there, it's still apparently not enough, which is really disappointing. But black market access, like I said, very easy. There's people popping up on Instagram every day, new accounts selling CBD oil because it's apparently the new gold rush over the last couple of years.
Brain rush.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never asked you this, Steve, but do you follow kind of CBD, I guess that dichotomy between the black market and the legal market? Do you follow that activity abroad? So do you have any sense of how big the black market is in other parts of the world?
Unfortunately not. Frankly, I don't have enough time. I imagine from the reports I've read and everything like that, I mean, like despite the legal industry taking off in Canada and the US a bit, the black market still, totally swamps the.
But hold on, is it really black market overseas in a sense now?
Yeah, this
kind of isn't anymore.
Yeah,
because it's not.
Yeah,
prescription.
Because it's not prescription. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I
That's a good
suppose
point.
products that we might think of as black market here. So, for example,
Yeah.
very big website in the US, Charlotte's Web. If people order that into Australia, technically that's black market because
Mm.
it's not on the TGA's special access scheme list of
Yeah.
unapproved medicines. But so I guess the reason for my question is I always think prior to the legalizing of medicinal cannabis in Australia, which sort of kicked off with the Victorian Access to Medicinal Cannabis Act in 2016, we've only really had an industry for not nearly 5 years, and prior to that it was all black market. If you wanted CBD in Australia, it was all black market, and so there's a clear relationship between the stringency of regulations and the size and scope of the black market. So the tighter the regulations are, the harder access is, the more you're prohibiting people from getting that. It just opens the floodgates to a black market. It's some simple economics, but when you have a more deregulated industry in other parts of the world, I'm just assuming that the black market doesn't thrive quite as well as perhaps it does here in Australia. But I honestly don't know.
Yeah, and this is the thing that I sort of concur with that. That like if you have these barriers to entry, these over regulation, in some people's views, and in my opinion, I think things could be easier. Things could be better from a bureaucratic point of view. They are getting better, but they still could be a lot better.
Mm.
Like when you place restrictions on human freedom, people are going to fight against it. They're just going to do it. You can't stop people from accessing something that they want to access. I'm not going to get into the whole like drug war, discussion or anything like that. But we're all human beings. People just want better lives. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And if you stop people from getting their medicine, they're gonna grow it themselves. They're gonna get it from someone that's not producing it correctly, because they're just gonna try it.
Yeah.
I see the other day a meme that said, "Congratulations to drugs, by the way, on winning the war on drugs."
That's right.
Kind of sums it up.
Yeah, no, and then it's true. I mean, we've seen it throughout history with the temperance movement, prohibiting alcohol. Suddenly you see moonshine showing up and all this. So, yeah, it's quite interesting, and I guess I hark back to our discussion a short time ago, just around how you have it as a food supplement. Like nothing in terms of access, that's got to be as easy as it gets for getting CBD. But here in Australia, we have gone down a different pathway where we've decided to, treat it only as a medicine, and create pretty stringent access requirements. I mean, you have to fail a first line therapy for your indication in order to get access. Like that, these sorts of things just add steps upon steps.
Right.
I'm not at all here to be critical about that, but I think that's why Lambert has put out that data to just talk about how the black market still accounts for more than 90% of the CBD that's consumed in Australia.
And yeah, I would totally agree with that percentage. If not, it might even be high. Just purely because stuff is being imported all the time in bulk. I'm sure people install, like some of these black market sellers. Some of them are growing it like locally, like say high CBD varieties of like cannabis or hemp, and some people are importing bulk isolate from China, Europe, distillate, whatever, I don't know, and just mixing it on this end. I don't know what people do with their different business models, but my issue with, I guess, all these Instagram sellers and stuff like that is that you're supporting someone's lifestyle. This is an individual that's gone into this game to make money for themselves. And yes, I understand business, like everyone's out to make a dollar, right? But you're supporting someone's lifestyle that they're going to tell you things that aren't correct to make a sale, like it cures your ADHD or it cures your cancer or Parkinson's or whatever. And that's wrong to me. That's just flat out wrong. And immoral, just so you can make a sale. Whereas if you support the legal industry, you know, you're supporting actual quality products. You know, you're supporting the actual industry as a whole in providing tested medicine. You're also supporting the industry from the point of view of there's data that is being acquired that's going to help push the entire industry forward and potentially allow homegrown and, you know, like full decriminalization and everything like that down the track. Yeah, because that data is going to be there. It's going to be irrefutable. You know, ideally, you know, perfect world, that would happen right now. But, you know, it's baby steps, you know.
Well, have you, in the time you've been running CBD reviews, and I'm mindful of time, and certainly, you know, you know, if you accept our invitation, we'll be very, very pleased to have you back on for another.
Absolutely, I'll accept right now.
See you.
I'll make this my last question. Mitch might have one for you after me, but I just wanted to see, in trying to end on a positive note, in the time you've been running CBD reviews, and your, I guess, you know, the endorsement that you've just given to the legal industry and all of the positive things that come from it, have you seen pricing come down in, you know, since you've been running, you know, around and getting a sense of pricing on all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Pricing for legal products has come down. A lot of producers that have been, like products say have been out for a while, have reduced prices, but then there's been a lot of products that haven't. In like 18 months, 2 years, they've literally released a product at a really good price point and that haven't reduced it any further. They're still price competitive. There's flour, like that's become pretty damn close to street prices. That's grown locally as well. That obviously is tested quality, like different strains, more and more strains of flour are coming out, both imported and locally. And, you know, price point, I think, yeah, legal prices are coming down, maybe not quick enough, but, you know, they are coming down. Black market prices have, I would say, actually have remained stagnant. Because again, you know, like, you know, they don't have the mass scale of production, for instance, so you can't really, without, you know, doing like big grows or big extractions, you can't reduce costs. You don't have those like beneficial gains. I mean, like even some black market products actually are still, you know, even though they're quality products, they're charging double the price of legal products, the equivalent legal products. And honestly, I don't know how they're getting away with that. I don't know if people just want to support the black market, and I'm all for supporting it because I 100% support the black market, because without them, the people over the last few decades, you know, growing and making their own extractions and things, the legal market wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
The demand wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
You know, I just wish that the legal side of things and the government would actually give people on the black market side a chance to actually say have small family businesses and having their own grows. And getting a product to the legal market. I mean, that was allowable and doable.
Technically, they could, in a way. They could apply for a license, but
I think arguably a lot of them would probably argue that purely because some of them may have like criminal convictions. So you're outright, you just, you know, you're done right there. But there's a lot of lost knowledge there. I think really a lot of lost knowledge. I mean, you yourself know, probably Mitch, like from you know, from a cultivation side, that, you know, there's people that have been doing it for decades.
Oh yeah. No, there's very there's good growers that have been doing it for, you're right, decades in Australia and in various places throughout the outback. And yeah, that'd be a massive asset to even some of the legal. And I happen to know there's some people that have gone to legal cultivations from that because they do have the knowledge, they do have the know-how. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years. I think there's going to be maybe a few different shakeups that who knows, as things, it's hard to imagine that it's going to be, especially the CBD side of things, so deregulated in other parts of the world and not here. I mean, we've taken the first step with the S3 stuff, but we'll see where it goes from there, I guess. I do have a kind of a question in terms, because you are so ear to the ground Steve, if there was one question, or like it might be a tie between a couple or two or three, one question that you're just like, this is the most, I'm on repeat here, kind of answering this same question day in, day out. What would be the most asked question in the forums, in the feedback from the people that you just?
That's a tough one. There are a lot
Might
of
be a
questions
tie.
that, yeah, it might be a tie. I think one of them that's asked all the time is like, how do I actually access cannabis, like medicinal cannabis legally? What's the process? Despite all the resources and websites and out there, different social media groups on various platforms, doesn't matter if it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or what have you. So many people have written guides and information, but there's still this, I guess, perception that it's difficult. But really, it's really not that difficult. I think another question is, like, what is CBD good for my condition?
Will it help?
Will it help my condition? And it could range from any number of conditions that people are just unsure of. That there is research data out there that, like CBD can be appropriate for many conditions, like a lot of conditions. I'm not going to go into specifics or make promises or myself, but they're probably the two most often asked questions. Or, well, actually, maybe another third. Where do I get it?
Yeah. And don't you sometimes, you see sometimes on those forums, one of these, rogue black market operators just jumps on and says, if anyone's interested, here's my website, come buy CBD. Yeah. So
usually get the old flick from the
pretty
old,
much.
They
get their all block and ban. they get that. They get put on the list.
Sorry.
Good.
All right. Well, we might wrap it up there, but Steve, just want to say thank you so much for your time, your insights. It really has been a pleasure to chat to you, and we'll most certainly be having you back on. So
yeah, most definitely. We could talk for hours, couldn't we?
Before you jump the gun, Andrew, I was just going to say, I know that Steve might have had some queries himself. I'm not sure if you still wanted to ask any of them. If not, we'll tie it up. But
yeah, I mean, like, I guess for you guys, you mentioned earlier, like your license. Like, how difficult is it to get a license?
that's not fun for the next episode. But no. No, it's look.
Two minutes. 2 minutes. Quick. dot points.
License in 2 minutes. Yeah, it's about how long it takes to get it, I think. Yeah.
First of all, we're going to talk about which license. So I think with the business that Mitch and I have as a sort of importer and supplier, our license process was nowhere near as intricate as some of the other ones. So a medicinal cannabis license, I'm because we're not in that space, I'm certainly not professing to know in great detail all of the hoops that you have to jump through. But I think at some point they were talking about unifying and just having a single license.
I think they've sort of like done that now for the like big scale projects.
So you get your cultivation license, you get your manufacturing license. I mean, to some extent, getting a license, say, to grow from the ODC and proving that you're going to have adequate security around the greenhouse, you're going to have vaults where you store product. I mean, you basically, it's a really large part of it is developing standard operating procedures so that you can demonstrate what your operations, your processes are for running the business. And on the
it's very, very paperwork heavy then, I imagine.
It's very paperwork heavy. You have to submit that dossier to the relevant government authority. I assume the same is true for the manufacturing license from the TGA. But then there's the ongoing regulatory compliance side. So if your license requires that you which, it's actually a statutory condition of having a manufacturing license under the Therapeutic Goods Act that you manufacture to GMP standards. Well, that requires, an enormous outlay of money to set up a lab that is GMP standard. So it's a lot of work. It's not for the faint-hearted, and perhaps that ties back to your point about, we talk about the patient access side, but if you want to be an industry participant, if you want to be a grower or you want to be a manufacturer, you want to get into extraction, the bar is very high in Australia compared to other jurisdictions globally. So, that's, some people would say, well, that's because we have, rigorously high standards, and that's a good thing. Others would say, well, there's something, nice about the fact that, say, in America, you have, mum and dad growers who have their little cultivation site. They get their biomass of flower, they supply it to a bigger fish who then, accumulates it from a number of different community farms, and then processes it into oil. So, it removes that, I guess, yes, the mum and dad growers in Australia could just go down the path of getting a consultant to help them get a license and all of that. But the barrier is higher. That's just a fact. So
that's the Andrew Long version. I'll do the fun short version for people listening, which is from the time. So Andrew and I work full time still, actually, which is quite
wow.
We got a lot on the plate, but we do it because we're just passionate about it, and because it's something that runs, as you said, in the blood. But from Googling, how do I get a license for cannabis, to actually receiving it in the mail, it took us probably, I'd say, 6-7 months from, and that was pretty much working, not 9 to 5 because we're working, but probably 5 to 9 or 5 to 1 in the morning, pretty much 5-6 days a week, on top of, there's quite a bit that went into it, and that was literally having not a clue how to do it, and just
and I have to say, big shout out to the Victorian Department of Health and the Office of Drug Control, who fielded all our queries, however so naive they were. I have to say the regulators are very proactive in trying to help people understand what their regulatory obligations are. So I was very appreciative of that. I got a lot of assistance from various officers at those departments with respect to the application process. But it's not for the faint-hearted, that's for sure.
Yeah,
it is possible if you have the time and the money, as with everything.
Well, the import license is not actually that onerous in terms of finance. It's not actually that expensive.
It's free.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's free.
Wow.
It's free, but you need to have a supply license from your state or territory Department of Health, and that costs. So, in Victoria anyway, our business has a Schedule 4 supply license, and a Schedule 8 supply license, and both of those I think were about $1,200 each, and then it's a sort of $300 renewal every year. So it's a bit, but it's not.
But then the facilities are like, depending on how you structure it, having a facility that can hold that, and then there's
So because you need like secure storage or something, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And if you don't have an in-house lawyer like Andrew to navigate it for you, it would be very expensive from a legal perspective. So
it still is expensive, actually, Mitch. I just haven't invoiced the company yet.
That's good, because you'll have to pay your own bill.
Yeah, that's right. Take it out of your own equity.
My bit's pro bono, but
yeah. Look, it's kind of like anything. Like, how much do you want to learn how to play piano? If you just sit there and play 5 hours every night, you'll probably be good after 6 months. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe not the best analogy, but it's basically, if you just do it, and the more you do it, the more you understand, and the more you understand, the closer you get to actually, overcoming. And we've had so many hurdles in the process, or perceived, it's been a roller coaster the whole way. Some days we're like, yes, we're going to do it. We're going to be cannabis, whatever, and lords of cannabis, whatever, and then the next day I'll be like, what are we doing? Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe. And then this has come in and it's like, oh, we're not going to be able to operate anymore, or we're not even going to get the license, or it's a roller coaster, and it's not for the faint-hearted. It's quite emotional, the whole process, and daily things change. And now, we're looking at GMP regulations for imports that might change the whole nature of the products we're allowed to import. Like, I see the pros and cons for that argument, but that's a whole nother argument or discussion rather. But we're just at the moment we're not even. The freight companies was a recent one. They've all changed their policy. There's just day in, day out. There's
always something.
Yeah. And I have to say, I kind of got locked into when we were doing it all, that whole process. Like, we got the licenses, we started to, get doctors prescribing it. And it wasn't until we got contacted by a patient, and not to sound all, kind of morally virtuous here, but, the patient basically contacted to say that the product was really working for them, that I actually got to sit back and say, oh, that's what this was all for. So it
makes it all worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's you start there and you go through it with that kind of the motivating factor, but you can lose track of it for a minute when you're so bogged down in the bureaucracy of it, and like getting it and the pricing and we're putting our own money into this. It's our livelihoods that we're investing into this, and beyond just the time and the money. It's quite an emotional journey. So to get to that point was very that was a really nice point.
Well, good on you guys for doing it and sticking to it as well, because obviously it doesn't sound like it was easy. It doesn't, like
the other thing about it is that
I was just going to say, Mitch, the craziest part was, didn't we just supply canola oil to that particular patient? So, it didn't even have any cannabinoids in it, and still got some...
not canola oil, sesame oil.
Oh, sesame oil, which just goes to show that the placebo effect is alive and well. But
it is. Because I can tell you that from the bloody from the group and comments that
we need to add that with just a little. That's a joke. Just
just to be clear, that was a joke, everyone. But because if it wasn't, they'd be on the list.
Exactly.
The funny part is when you say getting a license, like, we too, going into it, thought that was the holy grail, getting the license. Actually, the license is the easiest part. It's everything that comes after the license that is where the real work begins. And we know that now, but at the time we're like, oh yeah, we got a license, like free reign. Yeah, cool. We go do it.
That's
and then it's like on. And it doesn't start until you get the license. Then the compliance after that is really where it becomes, and like, you're making sure that you're doing everything the right way with doctors, with pharmacies, with the TGA, with the ODC, with the DHHS for us in Victoria, with the interplay between states, the questions that come from the pharmacies, the questions that come from the doctors, making sure that you present it the right way to the doctors and you don't do it in and making sure that you have keep your meticulous records of every single product, every single delivery, every single, it's just that
everything is tracked. Everything.
The freight alone is a whole thing. Like, so bringing it in and the insurance on that, and then the customs clearance, and then getting it to each pharmacies in your distribution list. And it's just like, okay, we got the license, but you can quickly see that that's actually the easiest part, and it just gets way more difficult after that.
Like when you describe it like that, it makes me think that it's actually amazing that legal prices are on par with black market prices. You talk about all these little steps, and so all the middlemen involved, the whole process and the bureaucracy and everything like that. It's actually, to me, that actually makes it more impressive that legal products are on par and cheaper in some cases. So.
And on top of that, and then add 20 to 25% right at the end just for the pharmacy dispense fee. So that's look, it has to be that way, and that's just how it is. But and we love our pharmacies. Don't get us wrong, but at the same time, that's a very, like, that's literally in some cases a quarter of the price is just that fee. So it's quite well, depending on how expensive the product is, but yeah, it's a lot.
That's a topic. That is a topic in and of itself, actually, of where along the process of, say, importing a product, who's taking all the percentages along the process. That would be a very interesting discussion in itself.
Well,
actually, I might have a good guest for you for the next one for you guys.
Oh, who's that?
I'd like to discuss that. We'll chat offline.
Let's keep it secret. I like this. We we have all of our 2 listeners.
Secret.
Yeah.
But no, it is a really interesting product, and I mean, all I'll just add to that as a kind of my full stop on it is that's one area where, of course, the domestic growers, despite potentially higher labor costs in Australia compared to wherever it's being imported from, they can really edge out because they don't have to pay they're not importing, so they don't pay import duty, or anything like that. Freight, insurance, all those. So yeah, it's definitely some benefits to having it grown and having a really strong domestic industry. But we will, if Mitch, am I allowed to finish it now, or did you want to take us?
All right.
Hour? All right, we'll wrap it up there. Really cannot thank you enough, Steve. And
thank you for the opportunity. It's been great chatting to you guys.
As always.
Mate, not at all. It's fantastic to have you on. We love chatting as always.
We'll do this again for sure. So
definitely.
All right, we'll take care, and until the next time, keep on reviewing.
Yeah, we'll do. And you guys keep plugging away.
We'll do. Catch you, Steve.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve. Cheers, mate.